Have you ever felt like life is heavier than it should be? Like every day you wake up carrying something invisible, pressure, regret, fear, expectations, and memories that refuse to let go. Most people think this weight is just part of life. They believe the stress, the disappointment, and the constant emotional burden are normal. But what if the heaviness you feel today is not your destiny? What if one day you wake up and realize that the weight you carried for years is no longer controlling you? That the past no longer defines you? That the fear that once stopped you has disappeared? Because there comes a moment in life when something shifts inside a person. When the mind becomes clear, the heart becomes stronger, and the burdens that once felt permanent finally lose their power. And when that moment comes, you begin to understand that you were never meant to live weighed down. Many people wake up every day carrying invisible weight on their shoulders. It is not the weight of physical labor, but the weight of memories, disappointments, failures, and the opinions of others. Over time, this burden becomes so familiar that people begin to believe it is simply part of life. They think struggle must always feel this heavy. They believe living exhausted, emotionally drained, and constantly pressured is normal. But the truth is that the human spirit was never designed to function under permanent heaviness. You were created with the capacity to grow, to create, to lead, and to move forward with clarity. When the mind is constantly focused on the weight it carries, it loses the energy required to pursue purpose. That is why so many people feel stuck. They are not stuck because they lack ability. They are stuck because they are carrying emotional luggage that should have been released years ago. Every disappointment that remains unresolved becomes another stone added to the backpack of the mind. Eventually, the burden becomes so heavy that progress feels impossible. Yet, the remarkable truth about life is that the weight people carry is often not permanent. It is temporary, but it feels permanent because it has been carried for so long. The mind adapts to pressure, but adaptation does not mean it was meant to stay there forever. Growth requires release. Progress requires letting go of the unnecessary weight that slows movement. Just as a runner cannot win a race while dragging chains, a person cannot move toward their highest potential while carrying every regret and every criticism from the past. When the mind begins to understand that burdens are not meant to be permanent companions, something powerful begins to shift inside. Energy begins to return. Clarity begins to grow. The spirit begins to breathe again. One of the greatest traps people fall into is allowing their past to become the lens through which they see their entire future. A mistake made years ago becomes the evidence they use to convince themselves they are not capable. A rejection becomes the proof that they are not worthy. A failure becomes the story they repeat in their mind until it becomes part of their identity. Over time, this pattern quietly shapes decisions, limiting the risks they are willing to take and the dreams they allow themselves to pursue. The past has a powerful influence, but it was never meant to have permanent authority over a person's direction. Every human being has chapters in their life that they wish could be rewritten. Yet those chapters were never meant to define the entire story. When people anchor their identity to past failures, they unknowingly imprison their future potential. They begin to expect disappointment before even trying again. They interpret new opportunities through the fear created by old experiences, but growth requires a different perspective. The past can offer lessons, but it cannot dictate destiny unless someone allows it to. The most successful individuals in any field understand that mistakes are part of development, not permanent labels. They treat failure as information rather than identity. Each setback reveals something new about strength, resilience, and capability. Over time, the lessons gained from those experiences become tools that prepare a person for greater responsibility and greater opportunity. Many people live their lives with the quiet desire to do something meaningful, yet they often feel distracted, uncertain, or unable to move forward. The reason is not always a lack of talent or opportunity. Very often it is the unseen burdens in the mind that slowly drain clarity and focus. When someone carries resentment, guilt, fear, or constant self-doubt, their mental energy becomes divided. Instead of focusing on what they were created to build, they spend their strength trying to manage the pressure of those internal struggles. Purpose requires attention, vision, and the courage to act, but burdens cloud that vision. They create noise in the mind that makes it difficult to recognize opportunities. A person may have the ability to lead, create, teach, or inspire, yet the weight of past disappointments constantly whispers that they are not ready. Every time a new opportunity appears, the mind immediately remembers the last time something went wrong. The burden becomes a filter through which every decision is made. Over time, this distraction delays progress and keeps people circling around the life they were meant to build. Purpose is rarely hidden from people because it is unreachable. It is often hidden because their attention is consumed by emotional weight. When the mind is heavy, even simple steps feel overwhelming. When the mind is clear, the path becomes easier to recognize. That is why releasing burdens is not simply about feeling better emotionally. It is about reclaiming the mental space required to pursue what truly matters. When unnecessary weight is removed, focus returns, confidence begins to rebuild, and the energy that was once spent on internal struggle becomes available for growth, creativity, and meaningful action. Pain is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. Most people see pain as evidence that something has gone wrong, something unfair has happened, or something in their life has been permanently damaged. They wish they could erase those difficult moments and move forward as if they never occurred. Yet many of the qualities that define strong, capable individuals are developed precisely through those uncomfortable experiences. Strength is rarely created in comfort. Wisdom rarely develops in ease. Endurance rarely grows in situations where nothing challenges the mind or the spirit. Pain forces people to confront limitations they did not know they had. It exposes weaknesses, fears, and habits that would otherwise remain hidden. In that process, something important begins to happen. The individual starts learning lessons that cannot be taught in calm seasons. They learn patience while waiting for circumstances to change. They learn resilience while continuing forward despite discouragement. They learn humility while recognizing that growth requires adjustment and reflection. These lessons slowly reshape a person's character. What once felt like a painful obstacle begins to transform into preparation. The experiences that once seemed to delay progress begin developing the qualities necessary to handle greater responsibilities. Leadership, influence, and impact require more than talent. They require maturity, discipline, and emotional strength. Difficult seasons quietly build those qualities beneath the surface. While someone is enduring hardship, they may not recognize the development taking place inside them, but over time those experiences begin to form a deeper understanding of people, challenges, and possibilities. The struggles that once appeared to be barriers gradually become training grounds where perseverance, wisdom, and courage are developed. Many people believe freedom is something external. They think freedom will come when circumstances improve, when opportunities appear, or when life becomes easier. They wait for a future moment where everything around them finally changes. Yet the deepest form of freedom does not begin outside of a person, it begins within the mind. The human mind has an incredible ability to hold on to experiences long after they have ended. A painful memory from years ago can still influence emotions today. Words spoken in anger by someone long gone can still echo in the thoughts of the present. Without realizing it, people often carry yesterday into every new day. They relive disappointments, replay failures, and constantly measure themselves against past mistakes. This habit quietly drains confidence and weakens courage. The future begins to look like a repetition of what already happened. Real freedom begins when a person understands that the past has lessons, but it does not have ownership of their identity. Yesterday cannot be changed, but it also cannot control tomorrow unless someone allows it to live permanently in their thoughts. Letting go is not about pretending something never happened. It is about refusing to allow those events to dictate the direction of life. When someone releases the emotional grip of yesterday, the mind becomes lighter and clearer. Decisions begin to come from hope instead of fear. Energy that was once spent replaying old memories becomes available for building something new. Growth begins to accelerate because attention is no longer trapped behind. Releasing yesterday requires courage because the past often feels familiar, even when it is painful. But once that release happens, a person begins to discover a level of peace and confidence that was impossible while holding on to the weight of what is already past. There is a powerful transformation that slowly develops in the life of someone who refuses to give up. At first, the journey feels heavy and uncertain. Every challenge seems overwhelming, and every failure feels like confirmation that success may never arrive. Progress appears slow, and doubts frequently attempt to convince the mind to stop trying. Yet something important is happening during these difficult seasons. Each struggle is quietly building resilience. Each obstacle is strengthening patience. Each moment of persistence is developing a deeper level of belief that cannot be easily shaken. Over time, the person who once felt weak begins to change. They begin to handle problems with more calmness. Situations that once caused fear no longer create the same reaction. Confidence begins to grow, not because life has become easy, but because experience has proven that obstacles can be faced and overcome. One day, often without warning, the individual begins to notice that the heaviness they once felt is no longer there. The problems that once seemed impossible now appear manageable. The voice of doubt that once dominated their thinking has become quiet. Strength that once seemed distant has become part of their character. This transformation does not happen in a single dramatic moment. It happens gradually as persistence replaces hesitation and growth replaces discouragement. The person who once struggled to believe in their own potential begins to walk with clarity and determination. They start recognizing opportunities instead of fearing them. Their mindset shifts from survival to purpose, and their focus moves from limitations toward possibilities. The weight that once slowed their progress no longer defines their movement forward. The individual begins operating with a level of confidence that is rooted in experience, discipline, and resilience. Life becomes heavy when we carry things that were only meant to teach us, not stay with us forever. Past mistakes, painful memories, and the opinions of others often distract us from the purpose we were created to pursue. Yet every struggle also shapes strength, wisdom, and resilience. Pain becomes preparation, and challenges quietly build the character needed for greater opportunities. True freedom begins when the mind releases yesterday and stops allowing the past to control the future. When that release happens, clarity returns, energy returns, and the path forward becomes visible again.